They fired me the morning after I saved their entire system. Not with a warning, not with a thank you. Just a sterile email. One sentence, no explanation. But what they didn't know, what they never thought to check, was that my name was still on the only account that mattered. Let me take you back. My name's Amara. For 4 years, I was the quiet one in a loud room, the kind of engineer who never needed to be seen, only needed to make sure things worked. And they did. Until they didn't. I worked at a fast-growing tech firm that loved buzzwords more than people. Scalability, synergy, automation, all the right terms to distract investors from the cracks beneath the surface. But I saw those cracks. I lived in them because I was the one quietly fixing what no one else noticed. And one Thursday afternoon, those cracks nearly swallowed the company whole. Everyone panicked. Teams scattered. Leaders vanished, and I stayed. Not because it was in my contract, but because I knew no one else could save it in time. That night, I became the firewall between collapse and survival, and in return, I was erased. It started at 4:13 p.m. on a Thursday, just a flicker, one of those database hiccups you can blink past. But I didn't. I've worked with this system long enough to know when something's off. It was subtle, like a quiet cough in a silent room, but to me, it screamed danger. 5 minutes later, the alerts started rolling in like dominoes. CPU spikes, API failures. Query timeouts. The chat exploded with half-formed sentences and red-faced emojis. Is this global client can't log in? Restart the cache. Voices everywhere. And then the worst part, silence from the leads. People started logging off, redirecting, reassigning. I stayed, not because someone asked me to, not because it was officially my job, but because if I didn't, no one would. I dove in terminal open, 3 windows side by side. My fingers moved faster than my thoughts. At some point, I stopped reading error codes and started feeling them. I knew which module was buckling. I remembered the patch I wrote 6 months ago that they never documented. I knew how to trace the memory leak no one else ever bothered fixing because I'd fixed it before. Quietly after hours alone, they called it teamwork, but what it really meant was, Amara will handle it. No applause, no promotions, not even credit, just expectation. By 6:30, half the office had gone home. The CTO sent a vague message, something about regrouping tomorrow. I didn't respond. I was already 10 steps ahead, rolling back microservices, patching risky endpoints, building a temporary firewall. Rule they wouldn't even understand if I explained it. The lights shut off on their own motion sensors. I was the only one still moving. I paused only once, just long enough to sip my coffee. Cold, bitter, perfect metaphor. By 9:30 p.m., the alert stopped. No crash, no downtime, no public failure. The system barely breathing an hour ago was stable again. I leaned back in my chair, shoulders aching, palms stiff. The office was pitch black now, lit only by the glow of my monitor. Logs scrolled by like credits after a movie. No one stayed to watch. I saw my reflection in the glass window behind the screen. Eyes dull, skin pale. A ghost in a company I just saved. My hand trembled as I reached to close the terminal. Not from fear, from fatigue, but somewhere deep inside I felt it. This wasn't victory. It was a warning. They'd forget this night. They always did, but soon they'd remember me for reasons they'd never see coming. When I finally left the office, the sky was a dull gray, washed out like someone had turned the world's contrast down. My legs moved on autopilot. I hadn't eaten in half a day. My fingers still ached from typing, and the hum of the servers echoed in my ears long after I walked away. But I had done it. The system was back. Clients wouldn't see a blip. The press wouldn't know a thing. And somewhere in the back of my exhausted mind, I dared to hope. Maybe this time someone noticed. I woke up 5 hours later, still wearing my shoes, and reached for my phone. 17 Slack messages. 4 unread emails. 1 company-wide announcement I tapped. Kudos to the team for staying calm under pressure yesterday. Special shout out to Alex for stepping up during a critical time. Proud of our people. CTO Alex. He left at 5. Didn't touch a single line of recovery code. He posted a bug report and dipped. I waited for the punchline. A follow-up. A correction. A tag. Something nothing. I refreshed the thread. Checked replies. Emojis. Memes. Haha legend. No one said my name. No one even hinted. That silence burned more than any insult. Because insults mean they saw you. This was airbrushing me out of the picture. Then by sheer accident, something else showed up in my inbox. A forwarded internal thread, probably meant for another Amara in marketing, but the content hit like a freight train. Subject payroll optimization, phase 2, candidates, body, non-client facing roles, low visibility, minimal disruption potential. That was me. I wasn't flagged because I underperformed. I was flagged because I did my job too quietly, too invisibly. They were planning this all along, and I'd just saved them hours before they could finalize the cut. I opened my laptop again. Don't ask me why. Maybe I just needed to see it. Needed proof that I hadn't imagined the weight of what I carried that night. System logs, stable firewall held uptime. 100%. The patch I deployed was still running. It was beautiful, clean solid, and no one would ever know. A ping popped up. Slack DM from someone on the SRE team. Hey, I know it was you who... Then the typing bubble vanished. Message deleted. They had typed it, thought about it, and still chose silence. That one unfinished sentence did something to me. It didn't shatter me, it hollowed me. I put my phone down and stared at the wall, not at the screen, not at the code, just the blank space, the nothing. Because that's what I'd become to them. No matter what came next, I knew one thing. They had already decided I didn't belong, even before I saved them. The next morning, my inbox held just one message. Subject line, HR notification. Action required, no greeting, no warmth, just a clean corporate execution. 1 PDF, 1 sentence. Please acknowledge receipt of the attached notice by end of day. I didn't need to open it. I already knew. But I did anyway because some part of me still clung to the idea that maybe this wasn't real termination effective immediately. Internal restructuring. No mention of performance, no recognition of my contribution, no reflection of the 18-hour save that kept them breathing just 2 days ago. Just numbers, just a name on a list, mine. The same list I accidentally saw the day before payroll optimization phase 2. Candidates low visibility, minimal disruption. I fit their criteria perfectly. I went into the office anyway. I don't know why, habit, maybe defiance. Maybe I just needed to see for myself if this was really how it ended. The security guard waved me in without question. The elevator dinged. The doors opened. Everything looked the same, like nothing had happened, like I still belonged. Until I reached the HR floor, Lauren greeted me at the glass door with a tight manufactured smile. She clutched a manila envelope like it contained plutonium. "Hey, Amara," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Thanks for coming in." I didn't speak. "This won't take long," she added, already sliding the envelope toward me. "Your final paycheck. NDA reminder, benefits continuation paperwork. You can email if you have any questions. Who made the decision?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. She hesitated. Just for a second. Then it came from above reorg committee. "You're not the only one affected, right? I wasn't special enough to save, just invisible enough to cut." "Is Mark here?" I asked Mark, my direct manager. The man who once told me I was the quiet engine that kept us running. Lauren gave a diplomatic shrug. He's in back-to-backs all morning. He knew I was coming, and he still couldn't look me in the eye. On my way back to my desk, I passed the break room. Laughter spilled into the hallway. Alex was in there holding court like some kind of hero, passing around donuts and bragging about how we held the line. No one even glanced my way. I sat at my desk, still untouched. No one had even started packing my things. For a moment, I just stared at the keyboard. Then I powered on my laptop. I expected to be locked out, expected to see that cold gray screen of access denied. But no, the dashboard lit up instantly. Admin access terminal privileges, root credentials still valid. My name, still listed on the only master account. They'd erased me on paper, but not in the system. I stared at the screen. For a long time, I could have shut it all down, flipped every switch, locked every gate, but I didn't. Not because I forgave them, not because I wanted to be the bigger person, but because I wanted them to forget me completely, to believe I had disappeared, that they were safe, because only then would they never see it coming. I sat in the back of the nearly empty office, same desk, same chair, but the air felt different. Colder, thinner, like it no longer had room for me. My name wasn't on the internal roster anymore, but it was still written deep in the system. I opened my laptop, not to check email, not to fight, but because I needed clarity. Something tangible, something that told me I wasn't crazy, that I really had been the one holding everything together. And there it was, terminal access active, root permissions untouched. My credentials still sat on the top layer of the master access hierarchy. Whoever processed my termination forgot or didn't know how deeply I was embedded in the infrastructure, or maybe they just assumed it would clean it up later. But no one had. I toggled open the architecture tree, full visibility, all nodes alive. I could see every subsystem, every credential trail, every ghosted patch. No one else knew existed. One command line and I could have changed everything. I hovered over the log entries. The temptation was there, not to destroy, no. That wasn't my style. But to mark my presence, to leave a signature encrypted into the bones of the system like a scar. Then I heard it. Soft footsteps, hesitant, approaching from behind. Hey, I turned to see Jonah. He was one of the few people I used to talk to here. Not a friend exactly, but someone who once brought me soup when I was sick, and who'd spent 3 straight nights debugging memory leaks with me last fall. "Didn't expect to see you," he said, fidgeting with the cuff of his sleeve. "I could say the same," I replied. "I heard what happened." He didn't say I'm sorry. He didn't say, "It's wrong." He just stood there, eyes flicking between me and the screen. I wanted to say something during the meeting. When Lauren announced the list, he added quickly, But you didn't." I finished for him. He nodded. Shame in the quiet space between us. I figured they'd take your access by now. I looked at him. They didn't. He didn't ask why. He didn't need to. We both knew what that meant. You planning to do anything with it? I closed the terminal slowly. Not yet. Jonah stood there a moment longer, then placed something on my desk, a small white USB drive. "You always said backups aren't optional. Thought you might want one." I didn't smile, but I took it. He left without another word. I plugged it in, not to copy anything malicious, not to create chaos, just to preserve the map, the full system layout, the credential tree, the names of everyone who had access, and more importantly, those who no longer did. I encrypted the folder and labeled it simply Legacy Root, not revenge, not leverage, just proof. Proof that I was still here, that I had mattered, that in the bones of this cold system, my name was carved in places they forgot to erase. I logged out, unplugged the drive, and tucked it into the inside pocket of my coat, right next to the envelope HR gave me. The weight of it was small, but it felt enough. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I didn't post anything online. I sat at home quietly sipping tea, watching the city lights flicker like server lights on a rack, cold distant, blinking for no one. Power didn't have to be loud. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who's already walked out and still has the keys. They thought they'd deleted me, but they'd only deleted the name on the door. The one buried in their system still belonged to me. No one asked where I went. The Monday after my termination, the office was more alive than usual. I came in not to work, but to collect what was left of me. I arrived early. The lights hadn't even warmed up yet. I thought it would hurt more to see my desk, to clear drawers that still had sticky notes with code snippets and post-its with fix, this if broken. But it didn't hurt, because it already felt like someone else had been sitting there. My inbox was locked. My calendar was gone. Even my Slack handle had been replaced by a gray silhouette that read, "Deactivated user." But the worst part wasn't the technical erasure. It was the people. By 9:00 a.m., the core team started rolling in developers' project leads, the people I had spent years working beside, and they walked past me like I was a stranger, not out of malice, out of complete detachment. At 9:15, someone brought in cupcakes. By 9:30, the whiteboard near the kitchen read, in dry erase, "We survived the Q2 meltdown." I stood a few feet away, holding the last box from my desk, my favorite mug, a worn-out stress ball, and a copy of clean code with tabs poking out the sides. No one said goodbye. No one even said, "Hey, didn't you?" Lisa walked by someone I used to eat lunch with every Thursday. She had just been promoted to lead the documentation team. I caught her eye. For half a second, I thought she was going to stop. She didn't. She looked down and kept walking. Maybe she thought it would be awkward. Maybe she told herself someone else had already said something. Maybe she didn't even recognize me anymore without the badge. I stood there a few minutes longer, waiting for, I don't know, closure recognition. A sign that my time here had meant something, but I got none, so I walked toward the elevator, slow and deliberate. I passed by the whiteboard one last time. Someone had drawn Alex in cartoon style, holding a cape and a laptop above the words, "Our back-end hero." I didn't laugh, I didn't erase it. I just walked out. The elevator doors closed and I saw my reflection, eyes tired, hair slightly unkempt, but calm. Too calm. I had walked into this company 4 years ago with nervous energy and a laptop sticker that read code like no one's watching. Turns out no one ever had. By the time I reached the lobby, my phone buzzed. A text from a number I hadn't seen in a while, Lisa. "To that Susan Loy, vi kom zam len ting." I saw what they did. I wanted to say something I didn't. "I'm sorry." I stared at the message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have said, "It's okay." I could have said, "I understand." I could have said, "Too late?" But I didn't say anything, because some silences deserve to stay intact. Outside, the wind was a cold against my face, sharp, almost cutting. I zipped my coat and walked away from the glass tower I once thought would be my future. I didn't look back, not because I wasn't curious, but because there was nothing there for me anymore. Inside that building, people were celebrating survival, but what they didn't realize was the person who had actually saved them was no longer in the photo. I wasn't angry, I was just gone. They toasted their success with champagne and cupcakes, but the cracks were already forming, and I was the only one who knew where they led. 7 days passed before anything cracked the surface. On the outside, the company still hummed meetings, Slack threads, coffee runs, recycled optimism. But underneath the surface, the first fracture had already formed. Ravi was the one who saw it first. He was the newest IT associate, only 3 months in. Bright, awkward, too polite for corporate, the kind of guy who still believed in code reviews and thanked the coffee machine when it worked. He wasn't important enough yet to be on big projects, so they buried him in low-priority monitoring error logs, data queues, internal health checks, the digital equivalent of watching paint dry, but Ravi paid attention. That morning, he noticed something strange in the analytics logs. The API responsible for syncing user profiles had duplicated 3 entries, then 4, then 12. Then it started skipping sync cycles entirely. At first, he assumed it was caching. He restarted the gateway. Nothing changed. Then he dove into the logs and saw something odd. A script, primitive, hand-rolled, labeled as temp hold, running silently in the background. It wasn't from the current repo. It wasn't documented anywhere. It simply existed. And at the top of the script, in a single line of faded comment text, it read, "Temp patch hold until next deploy AS." Ravi blinked. He didn't know anyone in engineering with those initials. Not anymore. He asked around. No one had answers, not even Marcy, the lead systems engineer who had been with the company for years. "That's Amara," she said eventually, after a long pause. "Amara Smith, the one who, the one they let go last week. She wrote this. She wrote a lot of things. Quietly, while everyone else was on Zoom calls bragging about sprints." Ravi frowned. "But if this patch is failing now, doesn't that mean—" "It means the glue's coming undone," Marcy said, "and no one remembers what she used to hold it together." Meanwhile, across the building, the core team was prepping for a major Q3 pitch. They needed everything fast and flawless. The system had to look bulletproof in front of a client who brought in nearly 40% of the company's revenue. But the platform was sputtering. Response times tripled. Scheduled processes froze mid-execution. Files rendered blank. Customer dashboards went white. Alex, still glowing from his hero status, tried to regain control, restart the nodes, re-index the queues, flush the background processes. He barked. No one said it out loud, but everyone felt it. The code base was buckling and they didn't know where or why. Elsewhere. Marcy pulled Ravi aside. "Keep digging," she said. "Look for other scripts like that, anything with AS on it." Ravi obeyed. He pulled archived logs, compared builds from previous versions. He started seeing the patterns: silent patches, undocumented corrections, manual overrides that bypass the company's polished pipelines. Each one solving a major problem with brutal, invisible efficiency. And each one had the same quiet signature. Amara had never been in the spotlight, but now, in her absence, her fingerprints were everywhere. That evening, Ravi sat in the empty break room staring at his terminal. On screen, another flagged process error blinked back at him, this one traced to a legacy permission handler, one with a master credential reference pointing to a still active root account. The user ID read a Smith internal. He stared at it, heart thumping. She still had access. He opened Slack and hovered over a direct message. Typed, "Hi, Amara. Sorry to bother you. I think I found something you wrote. It's holding more together than we realized." Then paused. Backspaced. Typed again. "Hope you're doing well. Not sure if this is still your number." Then hit send. Somewhere across the city, I saw his message. I let the notification appear. I read it twice. And then I closed it. Not out of bitterness, but because the system was already saying everything for me. Through its lag, through its confusion, through the silence where my code used to hold the weight. The next morning, Ravi traced another crash to a line of code deep in the permissions framework, an old patch with one signature still active. The root ID blinked on screen like a pulse in the dark. A Smith. The client call ended in disaster. Despite all the bright smiles and pre-rehearsed slides, the system kept stalling mid-demo. Graphs failed to load. KPIs didn't sync. The client's CTO asked a simple question about a delay in the report API, and no one on the team had an answer. When the call ended, silence fell over the room like dust. The CEO, Everett Lane, stood slowly from his corner chair, eyes scanning the team. He didn't shout. He didn't slam the table. He just asked one question: who fixed it last time? Alex opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Marcy looked at the floor. Ravi glanced at his terminal. No one knew. Or rather, no one wanted to say it. The name hovered in the air like static, unspoken, awkward, undeniable. Everett asked again, this time slower, who fixed it last. Time. Ravi cleared his throat. I think it was Amara. Everett frowned. Amara. Ravi nodded. Amara Smith. She used to be on infrastructure, let go during the reorg. The room tensed. Everett turned to Marcy. Why didn't we retain her? Marcy didn't answer, not because she didn't know, but because the answer was damning. They had cut the quietest, most reliable engineer in the department because her name didn't look good on a spreadsheet. She wasn't part of any client-facing initiative, Alex said too quickly. Low visibility. Everett's eyes narrowed. Find her, he said. We don't need her forever, just enough to patch the hole. Across the room in a quiet corner of DevOps, a new intern named Naomi had been watching the chaos unfold in silence. She wasn't assigned to any project yet, too new, too junior, but she had an instinct for tracing problems, and right now the whole company was one. Naomi opened the archived logs. She dug deeper than anyone else had into the raw server logs. The ghost commits the backup chains from the last 2 years. She found comments, Patch's tiny handwritten changes buried between automated lines. Every time something had gone wrong, there was a solution. Silent, precise, efficient. Each of them signed AS. She kept digging. Eventually, she found the credential directory. Only one root-level account was ever consistently active during major events. The logs were clear. A Smith. Internal still live, still embedded, still connected to over 60% of the backend's architecture. Naomi called Ravi over then. Marcy. Within minutes, the screen was surrounded. She never removed herself. Marcy whispered. Ravi exhaled. I don't think she ever needed to. That afternoon, an emergency meeting was called. Everett stood at the head of the table. For the first time in weeks, no one was smiling. He looked around, jaw clenched. I want an email sent tonight. Tell her we need her. Offer whatever she asks, even a consultant fee. Someone asked. Especially a consultant fee. Everett replied. If she's still watching, we need to show we're listening now. Somewhere across the city I was. Not because I'd been following their collapse with some cruel sense of joy, but because people had started messaging me again, quietly, indirectly, ping after ping from old teammates. Hey, random question. Do you remember that script you wrote in Q1 last year? Hope you're doing well. We're kinda stuck. I ignored most of them. But then came the email from Everett's direct address. Subject request for temporary support. High priority body. Hi, Amara. I know we didn't part on the best terms, but we're experiencing system instability that's affecting key client relationships. We've realized many of the solutions currently holding our infrastructure together originated from your work. We would be grateful for even temporary support at your terms. Please let us know if you're open to discussing. I read it twice. Then I sat back in my chair, looked at the city lights outside my window, and smiled. Not out of pettiness, but quiet knowing. They hadn't just remembered me. They'd remembered what I carried. I didn't reply right away, because sometimes silence is more powerful than agreement. and I wanted them to sit in theirs just a little longer. By the time they sent the offer, I'd already stopped checking my inbox daily. It came late on a Thursday subject line screaming importance, formal request, consulting engagement, opportunity. The offer was generous, twice my former salary, remote flexibility, full operational autonomy on back-end infrastructure. It even ended with, "We now realize your work was foundational to our long-term system health." Foundational. A week ago, they barely remembered my name. I didn't respond. Not because I was trying to be cruel, but because I wanted to know what would happen when silence answered. Silence. It didn't take long. By Friday morning, I received a message on LinkedIn from Toby Nguyen, an associate in client success I hadn't spoken to in over a year. Toby N. 8:17 a.m. "Hey, I know this is weird, but there was a closed-door meeting this morning with execs and the client team. Someone said, if we don't get Amara back, we could lose the account. Thought you should know." I stared at the message for a full minute before closing the app. So they were scrambling. Somewhere inside that tower of polished concrete and open workspaces, people were panicking. Inside the war room on the 14th floor, Everett stood facing a wall of muted dashboards, each a snapshot of systems slipping through the cracks. On the conference table, coffee cups, energy drink cans, crumpled printouts of uptime reports. Marcy looked like she hadn't slept. Ravi was typing furiously. Alex hadn't said a word in over 10 minutes, a rare silence from someone usually allergic to stillness. "Any response yet?" Everett asked. "No," said Marcy, checking her phone for the 5th time that hour. "We can't afford to wait," said Kira, VP of Client Relations. "This account is already threatening to walk." Their CTO asked why no one's fixed the ghost query bug, and Ravi says it's tied to a patch Amara created 2 years ago. "She wrote most of those patches solo," Marcy added. "Off hours, a lot of them aren't even in Git. They live in server-side cron or buried in backup chains." Everett frowned. "Why didn't we know this earlier?" No one answered. Because the truth was simple and humiliating. They'd never bothered to ask how things stayed standing, only why they occasionally wobbled. Toby, standing quietly near the coffee cart, shifted uncomfortably. I wasn't going to say anything, but I sent her a message, just to let her know Everett didn't scold him. He just nodded. "Good," he said. "She needs to understand we're serious. This is about fixing what's broken." But that was the problem. I wasn't broken. They were. By Saturday, I had 4 more messages from various team members, some from people I barely remembered. Some were awkward, some sounded desperate. "Hey, Amara, not sure if you've seen the email. Just want you to know we all appreciate your work. The execs really regret how everything happened. We're doing our best to rebuild things right. Please consider the offer. We really need your help." What struck me wasn't the flattery, it was the fear. They weren't trying to win me back. They were trying to keep the system from collapsing before the next audit. And somewhere in all that noise, the power shifted. I didn't need them anymore, but they still needed me. I opened Everett's email again. I read every word slowly. Then I clicked reply, and I wrote just one sentence. "I've moved on. Please revoke my account now." No sign-off, no pleasantries, just the cold formality of someone returning the crown. No one realized she wore until it was too late. I hit send. Then I closed my laptop, picked up my tea, and walked to the window. The city stretched before me, glowing, distant, wide open. And behind me, inside the system, they thought they'd mastered the silence. I left behind was only just beginning to speak. In the control center, Ravi stared at the new log entry. One final root-level action. Request access termination, submitted by a Smith. And then, nothing. The first client to walk wasn't loud about it. They didn't send threats, no legal warnings. Just a short email to Everett's office thanking the company for the past collaboration and informing them that they were terminating the contract effective immediately. The reason, 3 straight days of downtime. 2 failed data syncs. 1 unacknowledged ticket that had been marked as resolved without ever being touched. That client Sintra Solutions had been worth $4 or $2 million annually. When their message was forwarded around the executive team, no one said anything for a full minute, not even Alex. The next hour was chaos. Department heads blamed miscommunication, engineering cited technical debt. PR scrambled to draft a clarification statement in case word got out, but it was too late. The CTO of Sintra, Clara Tran, had already updated her LinkedIn exploring new vendor partnerships, focused on long-term stability and ethical engineering practices. She didn't tag anyone. She didn't have to. The message was loud enough. Meanwhile, I was drinking coffee at my favorite corner shop, the kind with low lighting and old jazz and baristas who don't write your name on the cup. The chaos wasn't mine anymore. I had no stake in the fallout. But then, my phone buzzed. Subject Consulting Inquiry. From Clara Tran. I blinked. I hadn't spoken to Clara in almost a year, back when I was still visible enough to be pulled into late-night client syncs and firefighter calls. She'd always been sharp, direct, the kind of woman who didn't waste words or time. Her message was brief. Hi, Amara. I hope you're well. I wanted to reach out privately and ask, are you available for short-term consultation work? Our team is shifting directions and looking for someone who understands distributed systems deeply and quietly. You came to mind immediately. Let me know, Clara. I read it twice. Then again, slower. She didn't mention the company I used to work for, didn't bring up the system failure or the headline-level departure. Just a question. One that was layered with respect. Not desperation respect. 3 days later, we met for tea. Clara wore her usual slate-gray blazer hair in a practical bun. I wore jeans and a sweater and didn't bother with formalities. She got straight to the point. We're restructuring our infrastructure, moving away from vendors who prioritize polish over resilience. I need someone who doesn't talk big, but builds systems that don't break. That's you. It wasn't a pitch. It was a statement. I nodded. What would the engagement look like? Flexible, remote. 6-month contract to start. You lead the technical design, we follow your blueprint, no politics, no office drama, no Slack threads pretending to be culture, just clean architecture, quiet trust, and pay. Let's just say it was more than double what the other place had offered me to come back. The next week I signed the contract. It wasn't flashy, no press release, no LinkedIn post. Just a PDF, a signature and a quiet smile I didn't even realize was on my face, because this time it was on my terms. There was something soft and satisfying about it, not triumphant, not smug, just still. Like a part of me had finally clicked back into place. I didn't have to prove anything anymore. I didn't need to be seen by people who had never really looked, because those who mattered already knew cliffhanger. As I filed the signed contract, another message landed in my inbox. From another client, subject line referral from Clara Tran. 3 weeks after I declined their offer, the first core system collapsed entirely. The issue began quietly, just a small, persistent memory leak in their logging server, left unchecked. It spread like mold behind drywall. Then came the cascading timeout errors. Data failed to sync across environments. The deployment pipeline hung indefinitely on every third push. The infrastructure buckled again. But this time, no one could reach for the silent fallback I'd written years ago. I'd disabled my root credentials the day I walked away. By the following Monday, the company's 3 biggest systems client dashboard billing module and internal tracking had all crashed simultaneously. Everett called an emergency, all hands, and tried to downplay it, called it a temporary pressure point, but no one was buying it anymore. People weren't just frustrated, they were leaving. Ravi gave his notice first. Quietly, no exit interview, just a 2-sentence email. Then came Priya from finance, then Donovan from DevOps. By midweek, 5 more people had resigned, including Julia. Julia was a respected lead on the architecture team. She was also one of the few people who had watched in silence when I was let go. Her farewell email was short but pointed. "We used to build for the future, now we're duct taping the present. I didn't join this company to lie to clients about uptime. It went viral inside the company. Not publicly, but enough that even the board saw it. From a distance, I watched the story unfold, not with bitterness, but a strange calm. Each resignation email that landed in my inbox, each ping from a former teammate asking for advice, added to the quiet reckoning. People weren't leaving for better perks. They were leaving because they had lost trust in the system and the people running it. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to post a single thing. They were unraveling all on their own. Because when a company builds its empire on invisibility and convenience, it forgets that the people doing the invisible work are also holding up the entire roof. And when you let go of those people, the collapse isn't sabotage. It's gravity. Inside the boardroom, things were spinning out of control. Everett stood with his back to the window, facing a semicircle of board members with folded arms and tired eyes. "This is a temporary misalignment," he insisted. "We're stabilizing as we speak. We've made offers to replacement engineers, and a new consulting firm is onboarding. 3 major clients terminated their contracts in the past month. 1 board member countered. All cited operational instability and lack of institutional knowledge. We're addressing." "No," another interrupted. "You're reacting badly and too late." There was a beat of silence. Then the chair of the board leaned forward. "This company didn't fall because of bad code. It fell because we didn't value the people who wrote the code." Everett's face remained stoic, but his eyes twitched. Then came the sentence that ended it all. "Effective immediately. Your role as CEO is suspended, pending further review." The room went still. Everett opened his mouth, closed it again, then turned toward the window as if somehow the skyline would offer an answer, but there were none. Meanwhile, I was finishing my 2nd week as a lead consultant with Sintra. The systems were clean, the team respectful, and I had full creative control. No drama, no politics, just code and people who cared. Every now and then someone would ask, "Did you hear about the old company?" And I'd nod, then change the subject, because I didn't need to live in that collapse. It wasn't mine anymore. Cliffhanger. As I logged off for the day, another message popped into my inbox. Subject: request from the board, quiet conversation. I didn't open it. Not yet. It started with a leak. Not in the system those I used to handle in my sleep. This was different. Someone inside the company forwarded a private Slack exchange between 2 senior managers to a tech gossip board. It wasn't malicious. It was honest. Amara warned us about this failure point in Q1 last year. She literally mapped it out. We didn't listen. I know I deleted her original ticket to make room for the new JIRA structure, Jesus. The post exploded. Within hours, a thread titled "The Woman They Erased" climbed the ranks of r Tech Insider. Hundreds of comments, dozens of reposts. Former colleagues chimed in anonymously, confirming what many suspected: the infrastructure hadn't collapsed because of bad luck. It collapsed because it was carried by one invisible person. Until she left, My name was trending not in vanity metrics, but in reputation. The silent engineer who warned them. She built the skeleton, they cut the spine. What happens when you fire quiet? Genius. At first, I didn't react. I was in the middle of reviewing a cloud migration plan for Sintra and had more interesting things to read than internet threads. But the mentions kept coming. So did the messages. One from Nadia Cho, a tech journalist I'd quietly admired for years. Her email subject line, "You don't know me, but I know who you are now." Inside, she wrote, "Hi, Amara. I've covered countless collapses, but your story, it's different. No drama, no lawsuits, just a system that broke where you once held it together. I'd like to talk on or off record. If nothing else, I think a lot of women in tech need to hear how you stayed quiet and still won. Respectfully, Nadia Cho, senior writer, Circuit Weekly." I didn't respond right away, but I didn't delete it either, because even though I hadn't asked for this spotlight, I couldn't deny the truth. I was no longer a ghost. Later that week, Sintra held a small team meeting to celebrate hitting their Q3 milestone. It wasn't a loud affair, just lunch, a few shared stories, soft laughter over solved bugs. At one point, Clara tapped her glass. "Before we wrap, I just want to say this milestone happened because we trusted the foundation, not the buzzwords, and that foundation is Amara. She's not loud, she doesn't ask for credit, but we see her, and we're lucky to have her." The room applauded, not out of obligation, but out of understanding, and something inside me softened. Meanwhile, back in my old company's tower, the atmosphere was splintering. The board hadn't announced a new CEO yet. Internal leadership was fractured. Junior employees tiptoed, unsure who they reported to. A few brave ones spoke openly on anonymous platforms. Some of their words made it into industry newsletters. Then came the final blow. Circuit Weekly published a piece titled "The Engineer They Let Go," and the collapse that followed. The article didn't vilify anyone. It just told the truth, what I built, what they ignored, and what happened when I left. They didn't quote me directly, but the tone was clear. Integrity doesn't need a microphone, it just needs time. That same night, I received another email. This one had no subject line, no introduction, just a question. Would you be open to leading something new? At the bottom, a signature block from a startup I'd seen mentioned in passing, Helix Point, a growing AI-driven systems company backed by a respected VC firm. Attached was a proposal. Role: Chief Technology Officer, Equity, Substantial Mission Rebuild, a better way to scale clean, resilient infrastructure. From the ground up, I exhaled slowly, then reread the offer. There was no mention of my past, only my future. I closed the email. Not with hesitation, with a smile, because this time the system didn't just remember my name, it respected it. The applause didn't come all at once. It started slow, then rippled through the room like a wave, finding its rhythm. I stood under the soft spotlight at the Helix Point Tech Ethics Summit, looking out at a sea of faces. Developers, founders, engineers who had once been where I was, silent contributors, overlooked, underestimated, and now they were leaning in. Not because I shouted, not because I made noise, but because I told the truth. System integrity, I had said, isn't about clean syntax or perfect uptime. It's about ethics. About who you choose to be when no one's watching. I was erased from a payroll, but they forgot to erase me from the very system I built. A pause. Then came the claps, and with it, a stillness inside me that felt a lot like healing. Backstage, Felix from the event team handed me a bottle of water. "That line about ethics," he said, "hit me right in the gut." I smiled. It hit me too, back when no one listened to it. Later at the networking mixer, a junior developer came up to me. Nervous, clutching a notebook. "I just wanted to say thank you," she whispered. "I thought being quiet meant being replaceable, but today I saw what quiet can really do." I didn't have a rehearsed answer, so I said, "The only thing I believed quiet isn't weak, it's just unshaken." 2 weeks later, I stepped into my new role as CTO at Helix Point. No grand gestures, no headlines, just a whiteboard, a team that listens, and the kind of freedom that doesn't need defending. My old company, they're still rebuilding, still looking for the next miracle fix. But that's not my story anymore, because I learned something powerful through all of this. You don't have to stay to prove your worth. Sometimes walking away is what reveals it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the invisible backbone, the quiet voice in the meeting, the one holding the system together while others got the credit, know this. You are not alone, and your impact is not defined by volume. It's defined by integrity. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever been in a position where you had to walk away to reclaim your value, or stayed silent and still made the biggest difference? Share your story. Subscribe for more, and if this moved you, pass it on. Someone out there needs to know that quiet isn't weakness, it's quiet power.